and that we know what we're doing, and we do, and we're excited because it is the last Facebook Live. That's not why we're excited, though. We're equally as excited that the theme, I love this theme, and Johnny, you can start to ask yourself, I want to start us out today, like talking about each of our orientations to service, and then service in the context of growing a professional coaching business. Because everyone's orientation to service is so different. So I'm forecasting for you, Johnny, so you're thinking a little bit about it. And I see we have a couple more people here, which is fabulous. So I want everybody to know we will start officially at 12 noon Pacific. However, you get some pre-show content. So it's totally fine if you're here and you have this burning question that you want to ask. You get to ask it early because you're here early. So that warrants bonus time for you. So if you have a question, put it in the comments. And if I don't see it, Johnny will, and then he'll say, hey, somebody has a question.
Nothing yet. So I think we're good.
All right, good. So I was thinking a lot as I went out to get my coffee today about service and about just, to me, this profession is so radical in how we can serve, right? There are so many other professions where people make a difference, certainly, like in the context of therapists and doctors, firemen, fire people. We are out rushing into burning buildings, and I'm grateful that that's not part of my job. And one of the things, and I'll be talking more about this, is this idea of like, well, what is it? Lots of times coaches will say to me, well, I don't really understand this idea of outrageous service. So I'm putting that into the ethers so that, Johnny, you and I can start to talk about that. Because my experience is successful coaches who are in this model, which is more of a service-based model, demonstrate outrageous service in lots of different ways, right? Like it doesn't have to look the same for each coach. So I'm excited to get to share a couple of my favorite outrageous service stories, a couple of from Steve Chandler and a couple from other coaches I know. And let's see, we have an abundance of time, Johnny. This is the most, this is so luxurious.
It is luxurious.
I don't even know what to say. But one of the things I'm going to ask everybody, if you're here watching and you haven't asked a question yet, if you're here watching, and one of the questions, remember, every week there's been a rating scale, right? There's been this 1 to 10 rating scale. So I'm going to be asking on a 1 to 10, 10 being the ultimate of service and your business being service-based, and 1 not so much. Where would you put yourself? And do you even know what that means, right? Because I know for me, I don't know about you, Johnny, at the beginning, I'm not sure I totally understood what that meant.
About being of service?
Yeah. I mean, I knew it from the context of the University of Santa Monica, and, you know, I had a better orientation to service than prior to my USM education. Sure. But I don't know that I knew what it meant in the context of a business and serving people in the business.
Agree. I didn't really understand that either. It's a different context, even though the energy is the same. The context is different, and we don't, we might think of like the service industry or something like that, but when you're building a coaching business, which feels very separate from that, it can seem out of place, and yet it's very much in place. It's very much a part of it, right? It's really slowing down with people and caring for them and being with them and listening. Like all of that sort of lives squarely in the realm of service.
Yeah, no, it does. And it also lives in the realm of service. I think this is, and we're going to get really further into this idea of serving people in the enrollment process, right? Lots of people understand, oh, I'm going to be of great service to my clients once they're my client, right? And then there's a distinction of how are you serving in the enrollment process? Like, what does that look like? Are there edges to that, or are there no edges? Because I made a story yesterday on my Instagram about how some coaches confuse service with being a doormat. Right? They're overgiving. And it's an interesting line, right? Because, you know, I have coaches who will say to me, what does that mean? I don't understand. When am I a doormat? And when am I being of outrageous service? Which, you know, I can appreciate, especially at the beginning, is a reasonable question.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. It's 11:58, people. We're almost at 11:59. The countdown is on for us to begin the final Facebook Live, Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
More people are here. More people are showing up. Carrie said,
yeah.
Hi guys, arriving early. Thanks for being here early, Carrie.
Yeah. So excited. And one of the things, we're literally in the countdown. So let's see, we are officially now at 12 noon. So we're gonna get going. Welcome to the final Facebook Live for professional coaches. I am here with Johnny Roman, who is the outstanding director of the CFJ Coaching Success School. He's also a grad. He did this school for 2 years, and he's a very successful coach who works with all sorts of people. He and his wife also lead retreats, and they work with leaders in where they live. So I'm always thrilled to get to be here with you, Johnny. My name is Carolyn Freyer-Jones. I have been a professional coach now for well over 15 years, and I work with all different kinds of people as well. And many of you know a big chunk of my work is serving coaches, right? And helping coaches create thriving businesses, because I think that's one of the most important things we can do for people as coaches. If you're drawn to helping people make more money in their professions, whatever profession it is, you know, that came in for me early in this because Steve Chandler was my coach, and he still is. And Steve was such an advocate for a life that was really different than I had imagined for myself. You know, Steve Chandler, I didn't really think of myself as someone who would ever, quote unquote, make a lot of money. I worked at the University of Santa Monica along with Carrie Hopkins for well over 12 years. And service was in my heart, right? I loved being of service, and I knew what that meant from a University of Santa Monica context. And then I met Steve Chandler, and he started to talk to me about what service meant within a coaching context. So the theme, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, it really connects directly to service, right? It's like some of us, from what I see in the coaching profession, many of us are measuring how much we're giving. We're measuring, we're kind of counting, we're like we get stingy with our service, right? Because many coaches are like, well, I had this many conversations. I don't want to give more. Why do I have to do more for this person, right? So there's the coaches who measure, and they're feeling stingy. I don't want to give my stuff away. There's a lot of that in this profession. And then there's coaches who are doing, 5, 6, 7 conversations with people, and they're falling into, as Steve Chandler would say, the doormat category or the overgiver, right? And then there's people in the middle who give, but there's this like, and I'm giving to get, right? I'm giving to get. So we want to slow this all down today. And Johnny, maybe you can share your own experience starting up in the profession when you heard like be of service. What did that mean?
I mean, what I became aware of was like, how can you really, be with someone and give your heart and your time and your love and support and really like do your best to support them in whatever way they need it, right? Like not from a I want to get you as a client, but really truly being rooted in human to human. How can I really provide value in a way that is helpful and not, connected to this person giving me money or anything like that. And sometimes that is in the realm of just having a conversation with someone. Sometimes that means a coaching conversation. Sometimes it means just, being with someone because they need some connection, some human connection, or anything like that. So it really, like, once I started to really understand that and relax into that like I could spend time with someone, and that in and of itself could be valuable. And if I continue to do that over and over again, like that in and of itself could support the growth of my business. And it felt really aligned with me and who I was, and with my heart, that it wasn't like a tactic or a business strategy or a like, well, this is what I have to do in order to get the money and etc. But it was like, no, like that's who I wanted to be in the world, and that's why I loved this as a baseline starting point, because it felt more aligned with me.
Yeah, there's a lot in what you said, Johnny. So I'm going to pull out a couple statements you made, right? So you said like it was in alignment with who I wanted to be in the world. I think that's really important. So this is the way that I work with coaches. Johnny works with coaches. The way that we work with coaches in the CFJ Coaching Success School is really like a service-based model. And that came from the work of Steve Chandler. And Steve Chandler used to say, hey, if selling works, I do it. It just doesn't work, right? People they just feel it. We feel it when we're being sold to, right? And we tend to repel that. And then being of service has a quality of generosity in it and open-heartedness, which for me, I was stunned that could be a way to grow a business, right? I knew it in the model of just be of service anyway, because that's who I want to be in the world. I did not grow up in a house where that was talked about pretty and at all in an active way, although my dad was of service. And so then Steve Chandler starts to talk about you can grow your business this way, which I found so interesting and intriguing, because for everyone to really consider, it takes you in a certain way off the hook, right? It detaches this idea of like, I have to get something from this person, right? And the question, and people can start asking if they want, right? It's like the place it gets tricky for people is like, but I do need clients. I can't just go around being of service all the time. I need money in my bank account. And my answer is always with, yes, I get that. I get that. And there's an irony here that the less get we have in our conversations and the less get we have in our service, the higher the likelihood is we're going to create a client. And it's an interesting experience to walk through. It's like, how do I create clients from pure service? And keep in mind that I'm a business owner that is here to build my bank account and create clients, right? It's an interesting, how do you hold both? How do you hold one in one hand and one in the other without attachment? So I'm going to ask the question that I talked about in the pre-show. I want to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, right? We've been doing a lot of rating scales. 1 being, I don't have any service muscle. Like, I don't even know what that means, Carolyn. I know you all talk about this. I don't get it. I need clients, and that's what I need. And that's 1. And then 10 is like, I have a huge heart of service, and I love it. And add in there, if you're at the 10, I want a 10 within my business is growing at the level I want it to, or I'm at a 10, and I think my service is not dialed in the way that's also creating clients. So you got to tell us a little bit about how it's going, okay? So 1 is I have no service muscle. I don't even know what you're talking about, and I'm sort of irritated that this is even a thing. And 10 is I have huge service. I'm totally in the game, and I'm growing my business in the way I want, or I'm of service a lot, but it doesn't seem to translate into clients. So we want to know. So we want you to put it in the comments and start talking to us. I wonder if it's a slower crowd today, Johnny, post a day off yesterday. I have this question.
It's a possibility.
I get that. So whoever is here, you're going to get a lot of us. You're going to get some real coaching. So congratulations. I'm going to, as people start to put stuff in the comments, I'm going to share some of my early experiences of serving as a coach, right? Like, you know, a lot of times, I mean, there's the formal, let's have a conversation, right? And everybody understands to some extent or another. We have 2 or 3 conversations, right? And then things show up in there that go, well, do I help them with this? Like, can I help them with this? Whatever it is, they have a job interview, they have a, you know, a challenge going on, a health challenge. They have something showing up in their lives that might create an opportunity to serve them at a higher level. So, do we getting any answers? Oh,
yeah, we've got a few. Yep. We've got Carrie said 9 at service, and it's working for me. Ed said service is 7. Lynn a 10, but it's not translating yet. Janet's a 10. It's translating slowly, and she's okay with that.
Yep. Okay. So this is all good, right? Like, I really want you to know. So it sounds like the bulk of the people right now are more connected to service. They understand it. They're willing to be of service. We're not in the, hey, I'm measuring and being stingy. I don't really like this model. And then it's like, but it doesn't appear to be translating as much. Can you read to me what Rhonda said too? Johnny, yeah. I know Rhonda had a...
She said, I'm at a 9. I'm fully connected to service, and it aligns to me. I don't totally step into service when I have a story that feels like I may be putting people out or potentially opening myself to judgment. And this latter point is what I expect is slowing down the progress in my business as much as it could be.
So one thing I want to say to everybody, it is nuanced, right? Like, have I gone over the line and overserved? Sure, absolutely. Certainly early in my business, and even in the last couple of years, right? Because in some ways, we can't know. There's no guarantee. And this is where it gets interesting for people, right? There's no guarantee that our service is going to translate into a paying client, right? We can't know that. We just can't. And one thing, if it's not translating yet, so if you're like, yeah, I'm of service, I'm willing to talk to people, it's not, then there's something else going on, chances are, that look like there's not enough context for what you're doing. There's not enough context for you as a professional coach, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But let me give you some examples, right? So I remember, and I've shared this story before in different coaching spaces. You know, I've shared lots on the Facebook Live that a lot of my early clients came from my CrossFit gym community that I went to. And I loved that community. I thought it was the community that created the clients, and lo and behold, Steve Chandler was like, no, it's you. It's you, Carolyn. If you went to the gas station a lot, you'd meet people there and create clients. So who knew, right? And that's true for all of us. And somebody there was having a challenge, and I knew them, right? I'd seen them at workouts, and I knew them, and they were having a challenge that I was aware of from another gym member. And I talked about it with Steve. I was like, because it was, you know, they were in a pretty significant relationship challenge, right? Somebody was ending the relationship. It was tricky for this person. And I felt uncomfortable, like, hey, do I reach out? I know this thing is happening, even though I haven't talked to this person. And Steve was like, what are you waiting for? Reach out and be like, hey, I've heard this is going on. You know, I can appreciate it. That might be challenging. If it would be helpful, we can have a conversation, and all good if you're all set. And so some of this is about stepping outside the bounds of what seems okay, and offering in situations that are tricky, and you know, people are in low places. So there's that. But see, this person knew I was a professional coach. They knew that. They knew that in the community. They knew I did these groups. They knew I worked with people. So my offer of time was contexted in, oh, I already know Carolyn is a coach, that this is not a small thing that she's offering me time. So this is some of what happens when we're eagerly giving of service, and the person on the receiving end doesn't fully understand the context of who you are and what you're doing. So we're going to slow that down because I think it's important. It's tricky to get the hang of it. And once you do, that can open up it translating into more paying clients, right? Because when people think we have all the time in the world and they think that we're so kind-hearted, that doesn't serve us as professional coaches, as funny as that sounds, right? People are like, God, that Johnny, he's so amazing. You know, he's just incredible, right? Johnny now, given his life, 2 young children, lots of work on his plate, if he was going to offer to be of service to someone, my guess is that he would be putting it in context of like, hey, you know, given what's happening in your world, I don't do this very often anymore. Why don't we have a conversation? Like, why don't we have a conversation given what's happening, right? Like, we want people to understand what we're up to in the world. So some of it is about creating context for what we're up to. Some of us like just go, oh, let's talk. Like, there's not even a mention of, you know, I don't do this normally, and given what's happening, look, let's just get on a call. Like, are you available today? And I want to say that to everyone. Some of us have gotten very caught up in, well, do I offer now? Like, shouldn't I look busy? Shouldn't I look like I got a lot going on? Maybe not. Like, if you don't have a lot going on, the truth is you don't have a lot going on. So if I say to someone, hey, I have an hour later today. I have 1 hour. Why don't we hop on a Zoom call and let's just talk, right? That can have so much impact. So some of this is about getting into the practice of how you share and offer service and doing it in a way that really is more professional, that's more elevated, while still being incredibly human and separating this idea that this person could be a paying client. So it's not a small thing to develop yourself into, and it's 100% possible. So I want to pause there for a moment and see if, are we getting questions? We're having a lot of, it's not translating into paid clients.
Yeah, I don't see any questions yet, but can I add to what you were saying?
Yeah, please.
So it's like you know, the other day someone from a leadership team that my wife and I were working with emailed us and told us that she has decided to move on and seek a different job, and that she had a lot of emotions and feelings about it. And so, you know, it's like there was an opportunity to really look at what she was telling us and look at the very human experience that she's going through, right? Mixed emotions and coming to completion and what does this all mean, et cetera. And, you know, I still sometimes get that twinge of, should I offer? Should I not? Like, how's this going to come across? And then I had to remind myself, like, would this be of value to her? Could it be valuable to have a conversation about what's occurring, about, you know, whatever's coming up for her, whether that leads to her becoming a client or not? Like, zero connection to that, and more about where she is right now. Would having a conversation be of service and of value? And so I offered it to her. I said, there's really, you know, we don't need to have it now. Like, I know you're going through a lot, et cetera, but I just put it out there. And this was very recent, so I have no updates on whether or not she's taking me up on it. But
yeah.
but in a way that doesn't matter. It's more about where it was coming from inside of me to
That's right.
put it out there as a way of being of service, and then that builds on each other, right? Like you do that more and more and consistently, and then that starts to grow into more of a business.
It does. And what I want to say, I'm seeing setting up the context is such a great lesson. Is it just practicing what to say, or is there more to this? I mean, Lynn, it's a great question. Some of it is practicing what to say, right? Like, we need to all become more skilled at communicating as professional coaches. I mean, some of us, we don't have enough language, even though we have the intention, right? So some of us, especially when we're newer, right? Like, people don't know why we're offering. They don't have any they don't have any reason to understand it, right? So some of it is practicing. Some of it is we are going to be of service to lots of people and not have them become clients, right? Like, I mean, I can think of 5 conversations I've had in the last 6 months, totally like, hey, I'm willing to talk if that's something you want to do. You know, I've worked with people a lot in that particular situation, and I was of service. It was wonderful. The likelihood of this person becoming a client is pretty low, just given where they're at in their life, but I was okay with that. So some of this is getting really okay with, if this is my business model called being of service, because I love being of service in my life, I am going to be of service a lot. And I'm going to make that okay, that there's going to be people who never become my clients. But then, Lynn, there's about like, when you're offering time to someone, how are you doing it, right? What's the language around that? What's the, you know, do people know you're a professional coach? Do they, I always say to new coaches, do not say to people, well, I just launched my coaching practice, and if it would be helpful, we could, like, don't do that. Your coaching practice is launched. It's done, it's in the past. It's like, if I'm talking to someone who does not know I'm a professional coach, I'm going to talk about that a little bit first before I make an offer. And the truth is, when I don't know someone, when they have no reference point for what I do, it's usually met very differently. That's just the truth, right? If I'm out in the world and somebody doesn't know me and we get into a conversation and I say, oh yeah, no, I'm a professional coach, and we talk some more, and then I say, you know, if you ever want to talk about that thing, we could do that. Like sometimes even then it's met with, yeah, I don't know you from, like, I don't know you from a hole in the wall. Like, I don't know, do you just hand out, like, there's no, I don't have any street cred with people who don't know me, right? I don't know, like, I meet coaches online who literally write to me. They're like, Carolyn, I'm a coach who has this great Facebook group where over 20,000 coaches go and you can share what you do. It could really help you. And they don't know me. They don't know what I'm up to. I'm like, you know what? I so appreciate that. I'm all good. Thank you, though. Am I going to try to make a dent with that coach who's already in that thing? No. Like, you all want to look at, when you're being of service and offering to someone, is it someone who knows you, has context for you? Is it someone who knows you in a personal capacity or a professional capacity? There's a distinction there, right? If people know me socially, it still may not mean as much, right? Like, it's like sometimes people have to learn more. I have to like, you know, I might not even start with a conversation. I might be like, you know what? There's an audio I send to my clients all the time that deals with this particular thing. If you want, I'll send it to you. Like, if that would be helpful. And they go, oh, like, you mean, like, what do you mean your clients? I'm like, I'm a leadership coach and I coach leaders. And they go, oh, yeah, sure, that would be great. That might be the first baby step of service. That's a baby step. The other thing is, don't be so fast to offer conversations. Do something else, right? Audios, articles, books. Like, be willing to start with baby steps of service to create more of like, oh, that was so helpful. Like, we want to, I don't want to say test, but we want to sometimes go in baby steps with people we know less and we don't know them as well, right? So, Johnny, I'm hearing, I see things.
Yeah. Well, Natasha was saying when she offers friends coaching time on the calendar, she puts context that it'll be a very different conversation because she's putting her coaching hat on, which I find to be very valuable. That distinction of, like, I'll be putting my coaching hat on, which is very different from my friend hat, to be really valuable, and people really, really get that.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's super. I think, Natasha, I think that's great. So I want to slow down what Johnny just said. So Natasha is sharing that when she's offering time to friends, she makes it super clear. This is not a friend conversation. This is a different conversation called, I'm going to put my professional coaching hat on. So people, do you see the difference in the context? So if I'm Natasha's friend, I'm going to be like, oh, okay. And Natasha might even say to me, and so this will feel different, and I might be more direct with you and ask you more questions that are uncomfortable. So that's even further creating context, right? Like, oh, wow, okay. Like, I want to prepare someone who knows me from a very different context, what this is like. One of the things to be aware of about a service-based business, right, is that yes, Lynn, it takes practice, and there needs to be a certain amount of what I would call professional self-esteem occurring when we do this, right? And this is where it gets even more less tangible and more in how you're being, right? Because if I feel tentativeness, or if I feel like shyness, or anything like that in an offer of service, I tend to think this person might not really be that good. Let's just say what's true, right? When someone's like, oh, I kind of do some coaching sometimes, and I think I think I could help you. I think I could. I'm going to be like, wow, that's so sweet. That's very sweet. And I think I'm okay. So does everyone hear the difference? If I don't have confidence in myself and how I'm communicating, that will land as you might be too green. And everyone knows, right? Whether it's a fitness trainer, whether it's I don't want a new doctor, to walk into my hospital room and be a little like, ugh. So I've never, ever, ever talked alone with a patient. I've never done that. And you're my first. You're my first. Like, we don't want to do that. So that I'm going to put on the table, right? Like, if you know your professional self-esteem or your professional confidence is on a 1 to 10, if it's still at a 2 or 3, that's something you want to practice. So in other words, if you don't have enough paying clients yet, get a couple more pro bono clients and start getting more practice with reps. Get more reps. Get more willing to grow your confidence, right? If you've had 2 paying clients at $50 each, congratulations. And you still might feel super green and super awkward. And your service muscle may be fully intact, but your ability to put it out there with strength and confidence still might be low. So I'm going to pause here. And Johnny, I have this sense that just because of what you said earlier, when you were like, because I remember when you used to be like, shouldn't I offer? Is that a good idea? I don't know. Like, there was always this question, right? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And what do you think was operating inside?
I mean, all the focus on me, right? It was, when you were talking earlier about sort of the difference, like using service to grow your business, and sort of the distinction between that and like sales, for example, or getting a client. Like, I was so worried and concerned about how it was coming across, how it would come across. Would they think I was trying to get something from them? Like, I was putting all the stories inside their mind and believing them, even though I didn't have any data from them, right? It was just like, it was all being self-generated, that led to fear and doubt and everything like that. And so it was, I had to, one, remind myself that those were my stories. I had no idea what was going on in their minds, and to remember that, like, sort of like relaxing into, wait, I'm trying to be of service. This is not about getting them. I'm really truly trying to provide value and be of service. And that helped me to relax into the experience and be like, okay, yes, I can make that connection or offer, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to give you an example. When Steve Chandler literally first came into my world, like literally within the first conversation where we talked, first of all, for 2 hours on the phone, 2 hours. So that's of service right there, right? He was like, call me, he sent me an email, and he meant call me now. Steve Chandler wasn't thinking, ooh, she might think I got all this time on my hands, right? He was like, call me now. He talked to me for 2 hours. Within 3 days, he sent me like 5 books. 5 books. Books just started showing up in my mail. I mean, he was not thinking, what's she gonna think of this? Is she gonna think this is weird? Is she gonna think I'm desperate? Is she gonna think I'm needy? I was like, who is this guy? And they were all books based on things we had talked about, things I was challenged with. I mean, I was not his client yet. I was not his client yet. And books just started coming. And he still does that. That's not like something he's let go of. So I share that, right? Because I think some of that people have forgotten about. Like, and I know for some coaches, it's like, well, I don't want to spend money on sending people books. Understood. But there's a lot of other things you could send people, right? Now there's videos, audios, articles. I mean, there's 8 million things. And I will say, one book that you spend $10 or $12 on, where you send it to someone where they get a physical hard copy, if they're a reader, that can have a big impact, right? When it's some of this is about like our own generosity, right? So you don't need to be Steve Chandler sending me, I mean, a lot of them were his books. So he probably had boxes of them sitting at home, right? Where he said to his wife, Kathy, send this woman another book, right? So, but one book, that can go a long way. So I want to share that so that we start expanding our ideas of what does it mean to be of service. Doesn't always have to be a phone call, doesn't always have to be a Zoom call, does not need to be, we can start gently. And I want to start to talk about outrageous service with your current clients. I want to start, but I want to pause, Johnny, because I want to see if are there questions hanging out in there that we want to
Not yet. No other questions. But
yeah.
But anybody who has questions, you're welcome to type them in, and we'll get to them.
So I want to share something that Steve Chandler would say to Michelle and I early in the beginning of our business. And he says, he would say this to coaches all the time. So if you have one client, maybe 2, serve them outrageously. Like serve them outrageously, because that's what creates other clients. So what do I mean by that? So in Steve Chandler's world, it looked like when his coach, Steve Hardison, would come to his talks, he would come and sit in the back and just be there when he knew Steve was giving a talk, right? So if you have a client and they're local and they're, let's say, own a retail business, like you going to the retail business and physically experiencing it, that can be huge, right? When we go and partake of what our client is up to, if I have a client who is doing something on Zoom that I can watch, even if they don't want me there live, I'll be like, send me the recording. I want to see it. And they're like, you want to see it? I'm like, yeah, I want to see it, right? Like there's so much we can do to show we don't just care about what they're up to, we want to experience what they're up to. So let me give you some other examples. Michelle Bauman, when she had clients who were writers, who were doing blogs or different kinds of writing, she would make sure she was getting it, right? So, you know, a story Amber Chris shares, a great coach who's on faculty. Michelle started to get her newsletter, and then Michelle started to comment, would send them to her and go, hey, this is amazing, or hey, I love how you said this, right? When you have someone who's doing some writing and you say, I'm going to read it, like I'm going to find a way to read their material, that can be a tremendous way to serve outrageously. And that can be true of a current client or of someone who you want as a client, right? So, you know, look, lots of us have people who are, you know, who want to be creatively expressing themselves, right? And one thing that's amazing to do with a current client. So if you have a client who's like, I've been waiting to do this, take singing lessons. lessons, do art, do gymnastics, right? One of the most fun things to do as a coach is to be like, hey, I just hired someone who's going to do a private art session with you and me. I just hired someone. You and I are going to do it together over Zoom. What? You're going to do that? Yeah, we're going to do it together. But I feel ridiculous. Well, I feel ridiculous too doing art. So we're going to feel ridiculous together, right? So these are ideas like you can go, oh my gosh, like I know someone who is an art coach who does this for other coaches all the time, right? And they will curate a private Zoom art session. You can do that with singing. You can do that with so many different things that are amazing, right? So those kinds of things can be super fun ways to serve outrageously. Now, I want to talk about something that this is where I see service start to veer off in a different direction. So lots of coaches are like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to send my client the most extraordinary like birthday gift, right? It's going to have a card, there's going to be a box, and you open the box and butterflies fly out of the box, live butterflies. And then music is going to come out of the box, and there's going to be these incredible spa products. So not that that's not a lovely thing, that's different, right? So if my client unless my client is collecting butterflies in some way, like I want to make a distinction between like gifts and service. Gifts and service, right? Gifts for the sake of gifts that are pretty and lovely. I'm certainly not here to say don't do it, but that's different than the kind of service we're talking about, right? It's like our job as professional coaches is to help transform people's lives. And most people have these secret or not so secret things they want to do in the world, where they want to express themselves, right? And, you know, because coaches ask me all the time, well, what do you do about clients' birthdays? I'm like, what do you mean, what do I do? I don't do anything, right? I mean, on Facebook or Instagram, I might be like, happy birthday, and I might acknowledge them in some ways. But I'm not sending cards. I'm not like creating a highly curated, gorgeous meal together that I take them to. And again, I know coaches who do this and it works in their business because they're serving in lots of other ways. That stuff's not a requirement. It is absolutely not a requirement. In fact, I remember a coach once said to Michelle, like, what do you do for clients' birthdays? Michelle's like, I don't want to focus on clients' birthdays because clients' birthdays, other than acknowledging their birthday, that can get me into social self. That can get me into I want to treat them and that's not what I do. My job is to help them transform their lives, and I want to remember that. I want to remember that. So I share that may be a very unpopular point of view in the world of coaching, especially in the more glamorous side of coaching. So I share that as something for you all to consider. And I want to offer to everyone, right? So we got the ratios. Seems like most people are in the I'm of high service and it's not translating. Now we're going to offer you the opportunity. Give us a specific situation where you think you're being of service, whether you've offered more time or you've sent something, but something's not landing, right? Like the person isn't responding or nothing has occurred. And we're going to see, right? I want to see if we can help unpack what might be missing or what might just be not the right time yet, right? Like some people are long game. So if you have a coaching situation where you're like, Carolyn, I did this, and this occurred, and I offered this, and it's landing flat, and I feel like I'm overgiving, or I'm aware of my own stinginess. Why are all of you coaches giving 2 and 3 conversations? And while you're posting, I am going to share a story about a conversation I just had recently. And it was a coach who said to me, how long do you talk to people? And I had offered this coach 1 hour. And I said, you know what? It depends, an hour, 90 minutes. It really varies. And this coach was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want an hour. I give people 20 to 30 minutes. Now, this coach was in a particular challenge called, they were making decent money, but not the money they would like to be making, right? And they were questioning why, like, I'm having all these people say yes. The fees were medium, they weren't low, and they weren't super high. And I said to her, you know, here's the challenge. When we raise our fees, we do need to demonstrate more value. We actually need, like, if someone's going to pay me $50K for 6 months of coaching, I'm very prepared to talk with them 2, 3, 4 times so that they understand that what is going to occur with me, and they have a direct experience of, this is not going to be average coaching. This is going to be deep. This is going to be transformative. There's a reason my fees are what they are. There's a reason people pay me what they do. And I don't just say yes to everyone. So we're going to spend a good amount of time together before we decide this is a go. So some of serving is like, how do I create value and demonstrate the value of my fee, right? And there can be in the box ways called deep conversations. Look, I mean, I used to say to coaches, and I still stand by this, what profession says to people, let's put 2 hours on the calendar? What profession does that? We are in a unique profession where we can do stuff and people go, 2 hours? You want to talk to me for 2 hours? Yeah. And we may never talk again. What? So I think there's something going on in the business where people aren't really giving 2 hours anymore as a possibility, right? I really do. Like, I think 2 hours is amazing. And for some coaches, they're, and I understand this, they're like, Carolyn, I wouldn't know what to do with 2 hours. I'm lucky I can coach for an hour and then I'm out. That's a different thing, right? I get that. That takes some more development as a coach to know where to go with someone. But for those of us that have deep coaching skills, if you're further along in this business and maybe you've gotten away from that, I offer to you, that is really valuable. Like, it can really change how someone experiences you. And you're saying, yeah, we're good. Like, let me know if you want to talk again. Now, do you see that? Like, I'm not saying, well, so here's how I work. So I want to offer to some of you who are proposing, like, to be real service is like, was this useful? Great. Let me know if you want to talk again. I don't know. I don't need to know that if you want to talk again. Just let me know. Great. No agenda on my part, right? No get. All right, Johnny, what are we getting?
Natasha has a question. Can you talk about how you organize your resource library? Remember the resources that you have for when they're applicable to someone new. I read so much and I often forget resources when I'm sitting with someone.
Yeah. Well, Johnny already knows my answer to this is like, I don't have a quote unquote organized resource library. Like we do for the school, which is great because coaches can pull from that. But Natasha, I'm the same as you. I don't remember a lot of the things that could be valuable to someone. So I just go, hey, I want to think about, there's something I want to send you, but I want to think about it first. So give me a day or two. Do you read? I'll ask, do you read books? Yeah, I read books. Okay. So I have a couple in mind. I want to send you one. Give me a day or two so I can just be with it to land on the right one. Really? You're going to send me a book? Yeah, I'm going to send you a book. If I know you read books, I want to send you a book. So Natasha, I encourage you to buy yourself a little bit of time so that you're not under the gun, right? It's like not everyone has books like at the top of their head where they're like, oh, that one. And that's okay, right? That's okay. But I will say a lot of coaches here don't have not just robust resource libraries, you don't really have resources, right? You're not really in the neural habit of like sending people resources, right? That is one of the best ways we can be of service. And if you're not, that's a practice you want to get into like today, like automatically. So I'm just going to say that. I'm looking at Linda. On a social platform, I reacted and responded to a post, is anyone out there, who said he was depressed. I saw in his picture that he's a serviceman. I reached out privately He responded with surprise. He said yes, but wasn't up for talking that day. I offered whenever he's ready. But now I'm apprehensive. Am I able to coach someone who reveals he's depressed? It's a great question, Linda. First of all, let's just acknowledge Linda's service, right? Just that she acknowledged someone who asked, is anybody out there? Like, that's an act of service right there, right? When we're in an epidemic of loneliness, that's a beautiful thing. So bravo to you, Linda. Now, in terms of coaching someone who's depressed, that's a personal question, right? Like, I don't tend to take on clients who are navigating like serious depression. Not that another coach wouldn't. It's just not something, I mean, for me, I don't feel like that's really the best way for me to serve someone. And I don't feel it's not that I don't feel as confident working with someone who's depressed. I think it's a different kind of coaching. That's a different kind of coaching. And there are coaches who are like, I absolutely work with people who are depressed. In fact, one of the things that happens, I have a whole thing I do with people that really moves them out of depression. Great. So Linda, that's a choice you need to make. And look, if you offer to someone and you have one conversation, it doesn't mean you have to coach that person, right? You could have one conversation and serve that person and be like, yeah, I don't know if that's right for me. So what's great about this profession is, unlike therapy, we don't I can say, you know what, I don't think I'm the right person for this. But I know a coach who does lots of beautiful work with people dealing with depression. Do you want me to connect you with them? Right? So let us know, Linda. That's my point of view. If you have another question on that. Oh, Lynn, I met a USMer. Can you read that one, Johnny? The dinner party?
Yeah, so she met a USMer at a dinner party. They talked. They had some things in common. She knew she was a coach and that she said she could use a coach. And Lynn offered her a conversation and told her she would send her an invite to a conversation. Didn't hear back, sent a reminder, and never heard back.
Okay. So Lynn, I'm going to challenge you here. Too much too soon. You offered, see, to me, if someone said, a USMer, I'm looking for a coach, right? I want to slow that way down. I want to, at the dinner party, I want to be like, tell me more. What's making you look for a coach? Now, Lynn, you may say to me and Johnny, oh, I did all that. So let us know. But I don't want to offer maybe even right at the dinner party. It depends, right? So I want to be like, well, tell me more. What's making you look for a coach? And I'm saying this to everyone, okay? So many of us, the moment we hear someone say, oh, I was sort of thinking about a coach, we're like, oh, I'm a coach. We could talk. I want to be like, I almost am like incredulous. Like, really? Why? Why would you want to work with a coach? I want them to go, well, why? Because here's the thing. I want them to tell me. See, there's so many answers in that. I want them to say to me, well, I really want to work with a coach because I think they can help me move this project forward. Like, there's something going on where I take 3 steps and then I stop. And I need someone who can help me take the next 3 without such a long period of time going on in between them. And I'll be like, oh, well, tell me more about the project. What is this? And they go, well, let me fill you in. I'm starting this business and here's what's happening. Lynn, when you're at a dinner party, your #1 goal is to get them talking. I want to get them talking a lot about, I want to coach and here's why. And I want to gently, with lots of curiosity, poke around. I want to be like, what do you imagine would happen with a coach? Like, I'm curious. Like, what makes you think that, like, what do you imagine would occur? You're going to get so much more data, and they are going to feel so seen and heard. So some of us are offering way too soon, right? And in that conversation, Lynn, see, I want to be like, I might, depending on their answer, I might insert a story depending on what they said. Like if they were like, well, I really want a coach because I think a coach will help me with this project. And if they share what the project is, launching a business, I might at that moment be like, wow, I really hear you. I have this client. They just launched a business. And one of the challenges we looked at and really handled was this idea that it's all going to go smoothly. Like they had a lot of like, it should go smoothly. And we just handled that because it's not going to go smoothly. So I'm sharing a story about another client in the context of the conversation in a way that's real, in a way that maybe they can relate to. So I'm just spending a lot more time on that. So Lynn, let us know.
So she did have a follow-up. She has a follow-up call here. So she said, I did ask her a question or two, but I didn't think talking about this at a dinner party was appropriate. To social self, that's why I wanted to take it more privately.
I mean, if I'm at a party and the conversation starts to go deep, I mean, I might say, let's talk over here. I mean, to me, Lynn, if someone is like, oh, you're a coach, I wanted a coach. I'm not going to be like, ooh, we're at a dinner party. Let's not talk about that. You know, I want to be like, really? Tell me more. Like, why? And if it starts to get personal, one of the things you can do, so this is another way to navigate this. So let's say it starts to get really personal and Lynn, your own inner guidance is like, whoa, this is starting to get like, there's, 20 people here. This feels strange. I might be like, you know what? We are actually starting to have a coaching conversation. Like, cause maybe I've offered one or two things and I'd be like, and I'm sensitive to us being at a dinner party and we're starting to have almost like a real coaching conversation. So if you'd like, we could actually have a real coaching conversation at a different time and place. Because I'm sensitive to, you're at a dinner party, you may not want to go further. Now, someone could say, no, I'm good. I want to talk about this. And I'm like, great, let's go sit over here in the corner. Or they might go, oh, yeah, it is starting to feel like we're getting into some stuff. I would love to have a conversation. Now, Lynn, I'm going to pull out my phone right there. I'm not waiting. I'm going to be like, pull out your phone. Let's get it set up. I'm not waiting, right? I don't want anything to get in the way of me and this person having a conversation because guess what happens? We go home, we send an email, and they're like, I don't know, this feels weird. Maybe not such a good idea. Like all of their doubts start to come in. Maybe they're like, I had a lot of Prosecco. I have no idea what I said to Lynn, and now I feel totally foolish, right? People's stuff start to come up. So at a dinner party, I want to be willing to be like, hey, this is like, but I want to have as much conversation as possible. And I want to be like, hey, I know we're at a dinner party. We're starting to have a really like more of a coaching conversation and I'm sensitive to, and they go, no, this is great. Let's go sit outside. Great. Or if they're like, yeah, I hear you. And I want to go, so listen, if you want to have it at a different time, because I do have other questions. I want to be silent and go, yeah. I did that. I was at, Carrie Hopkins will laugh at this. I was at USM used to have these evenings called Evenings of Magic. It was this big fundraising event. And I don't know if I was this year, but I was often the host. I was the one who introduced Ron and Mary and blah, blah, blah. And I was there that night on my own. My husband couldn't make it. And I was sitting at this table and I was like, I'm coming out with a conversation. I don't know. I'm sure my bank account was low. And I was like, I'm coming out with a conversation. And I sat next to this guy. And he was like, what are you doing now? I don't think you work at USM. And I said, no, I don't work at USM anymore. I'm a full-time professional coach. And we just got into a conversation on what do you do? We shared about his business. And he's like, I've never had a conversation with a coach before. I really want to. And I'm like, you do? He said, yeah. I go, why? He goes, because I think you could be helpful. I've only worked with therapists. And I'm like, well, what would you want to work on? And he talked about some things in his business. And I was like, pull out your phone. Pull out your phone. He's like, okay. We set it up. Did he become my client? No. And it's like, so we want to, it's this funny line, right? Where we want to be willing, but we want to slow it down. I don't want to just assume, right? I want to be willing to dig more. So I want to hear from people.
Jason got his first client at a dinner party.
Yeah, exactly. Way to go. Totally. Do you see that question from Linda?
Yeah, so she's had enrollment conversations with 2 potential clients. They were 60 to 90 minutes long, had 2 conversations with each of them, sent them video and article links. Both told her that the conversations were helpful and wanted to work, but they felt they couldn't afford her fees.
Yeah. And that can be real, right? Like that's just the truth of what people might be working with. And Linda, then it becomes like, so we talk about this a lot in the school, and Johnny probably talks about this with the coaches he coaches on his own. And I want to say this, Linda. So if I, depends on where you are in your business, if you're a newer coach, which I don't know if you are or not, right? But like in the beginning, if someone said to me in my first 3 years, if someone said to me, oh, I really want to do this and I can't afford it, right? I have two options. I let them go, right? And I go, I really hear you. And maybe I send them off with a book or something else. Or I say, I understand that. If I was willing to make an exception and do a much smaller program with you. So maybe I'd offer 3 months. I might offer half of that and do just 3 sessions. Is that something you'd want to do, right? Like you want to look for where can I make an exception? In the beginning, I might have even lowered my fee in the name of getting clients, right? Like in the beginning, anything, I was like 2 years in, I was like, I'll lower my fee just to make $1,500 instead of $3,000, because $1,500 was a lot of money, and it still is, by the way. I can do a lot of damage in some fun places with $1,500. So you want to think about, like, where are you, right? I'm not suggesting, different coaches are not, it's not appropriate to like diminish your fees depending on where you are, right? And sometimes we want to like create momentum in our practice, and we might want to consider, if we're in the first 1 to 3 years, do I want to lower my fees if I've had no clients in 6 months? The answer is yes, right? If you've had no clients in 6 months, yes. Drop your fees for a little bit. Get some clients in your world. Or it's like, do I want to create a smaller program that is the same? I'm not lowering my fee, but I'm doing less coaching. So if I only offer 6 months, do I want to offer 3 months? Do I want to offer 2 months, right? What are the different things I can do in the name of, these are 2 people I want to coach? Now, affordability is often an answer or a way to get out of it by being polite, right? Because we don't typically go, oh, like when someone says they can't afford it, we tend to go, got it, right? So just know, Linda, if you decide to try, like, hey, I want to go back to these people and say, listen, I've been thinking about you. I have some other thoughts. Let's talk. They still may say no, because sometimes affordability is an easier way to be polite and say no thank you. So I offer that. Just, and tell, like, if this is useful, if you have more questions on, well, how do I do that? Like, how do I go back to them? We can talk to you about that. Johnny, did you ever do that? I can't remember, obviously. Like where you were like, I'm going to lower my fee, or I'm going to offer something different in the name of getting a client.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I've lowered my fee, or you know, in the beginning, well, there was a time where I was like, 6 months is the minimum. And then people were like, well, what about, like, that seems like a long time. I don't know. And then sometimes I would do 3 months with them, or something like that, just because it, you know, part of me was holding on, like, I have to have a 6-month program, you know, like there's, you know, these weird beliefs about what it means to be a professional coach, and professional coaches for 6 months only, and all this stuff. So yes, I've definitely played with a lot of different approaches.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for coaches being like, 4 sessions, offer 4 sessions, right? Like if you're a newer coach and you're not getting clients in your business, you got to mix it up, because you want to get reps as a coach, right? You want to get reps. So you don't want to be so caught up in they can't afford it, or like I'm not getting, like Johnny. And I know, right? I remember various coaches being like, 6 months, I'm only offering a year. We get like caught up in these ideas like that. That's the thing to do. And when you have little money in your bank account and little clients, it is not the time to be like, this is my stake in the ground. I will only offer this, right? We don't want to do that. That's not going to get us more reps and more practice. And we want to be coaching, right? We want to be getting practice doing this thing, because here's something that is accurate, and I can't tell you why it's accurate. Clients beget clients. So those of you that have ever been parents or been friends with parents, there's this idea when you're attempting to get your children to sleep, particularly when they're babies, there's an idea that says sleep begets sleep, right? So like, even though it seems strange, right? Like sometimes putting babies to sleep earlier actually gets them to sleep faster, although that seems strange. Some people are like, they're too awake. They're too awake. I'm going to let them stay up. And sometimes it's the opposite. The same is true in coaching. Clients beget clients. Not because they refer people to you, although they may. It's like the momentum, we start to get into the rhythm. We start to get like, oh my gosh, I actually am serving this person really well. We grow our confidence, and then we're having conversations more easily. We're having the ability to like offer and not sound like we're terrified. Like everything starts to come easier. So I want to be a voice for if your practice is slow and you've just raised your fees and you've attempted your fees, your new fee a bunch of times, and you're getting those, drop it down again for a little while, right? Like be willing to be flexible in the name of my job is to grow the business. That's my job. And if it's not working this way, I need to try some other things, right? So I share that. Are there,
Jason, Jason has a quick question. What are your thoughts on working with companies that offer coaching financing to confront the affordability issue?
So Johnny, does that mean like the company is paying for somebody's coaching, or is that?
They offer financing to the client to pay the coach, so that it's basically a loan, essentially that's what it is.
Really? I mean, if my company was going to offer financing, and actually I did something like this. So back when I was working at the University of Santa Monica, there was an event, and it wasn't it was an event. It was a personal growth event. It was $2,500. I did not have $2,500, but my eyes lit up. I was like, I got to do this thing. And the university offered like this loan program if you wanted to do this. And I was like, I'm in. I will do the loan to go do this, right? And it was super low interest. I was able to pay it off. It was great. So Jason, my point of view is this is different?
This is a private lending company that's specific. They act like a bank essentially that works specifically with the degree, and you would direct the client to this company that then would provide them a loan to pay you, or they would pay you directly with terms of like loan terms set up with that actual company. I was approached by one of these companies recently. That's why I know about it.
I know, like, Johnny, how did you learn about this? So Jason, that I have mixed feelings about, to be perfectly honest. Like, I don't ever see when someone is saying to me like, hey, I can't afford your fees. I don't want to be like, but wait, here's this loan company that can help you. It falls into the category, it can feel salesy. I think it can feel really, salesy is my best word. I have other words, but like it can feel too salesy and slick and a little like, I don't know if I want, when I work with people, I want them to have enough wherewithal to go find the money if they want to do this, right? So I want to be like, hey, if they say I can't afford it, are there times I've said to someone, I totally get it. I totally get it. So I have some other ways we could talk about working together. Is that something you want to do? And I might offer something different, Jason. Or I might go, listen, I get that you can't afford this right now, and here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to do one entire session focused on you creating more resources in your life. Now, I want to be upfront with you. This is not about creating resources to work with me. I just I don't like when people are walking around in the world thinking they can't create resources for things they want. I just don't. And I really mean that, Jason. I think when people are walking around in the world with the big sign above their head called, I can't afford it, right? How many people do we know, including some of us, who are like, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. I can't afford that. And I'm always thinking to myself, even if that's true, I don't want to be walking around saying, I can't afford it. I might say, I don't have the money just yet. I don't have the money just yet. So early in my practice, when I would write to Steve and I'd be like, they say they can't afford it. He'd be like, offer them a session that's like, look, whether you and I ever work together, let's just do one more session all about creating resources in your life. Because I don't want you walking around in the world thinking you can't create resources for the things you want. And then I'll do an entire session all about creating resources. Like, what does that look like in one's life? What does that look like on the inside? And what does that look like on the outside? But now, I want to be straight with everybody. You cannot do this if inside you're like, ooh, if I do this, they'll pay me. The moment someone says to me, I can't afford it, and I make an offer like that, in my mind, I'm like, they are not giving me money right now. Like, they're not. So if you make this offer, Carolyn, it's pure service. I can't be at the end of that conversation about how do you create resources to be like, so, did you decide to find the money to work with me? That's not okay, right? I have to be like, so I hope this was helpful, and just know I am rooting for you. Like, however this serves you. Bye. So can everybody really hear that? So if I'm going to help someone, just look at how they're relating to creating financial resources in their life. It can't be in order to get them to pay me the money, because that's not service. So long answer, Jason, to I'm not into the idea of being like, if they go find it on their own, I'm all for it, right? They're like, I found this lender who will, great, but I'm not going to introduce that as an option, because that feels kind of salesy and yucky. My goal, just so everybody knows, when I'm communicating with people, and I would offer this to all of you, and this is something to cultivate, right? And this really is of service, to have zero neediness, push, manipulation, attachment in any communication I'm having with someone. Zero. My goal is to have zero stuff in my communications with potential clients. When a client writes to me saying, I'm not going to renew, I do not want my communication back to have any, oh, but, like, wait, you have so much going on in your life. Is this really the right time to complete with your coach? That is manipulative, and it's got push in it, and it's got, and especially when someone is our client, right? We want to really think about, like, when we're coaching someone, inherent in that relationship is trust. There's trust, right? They're trusting us to help them transform their lives. And then the moment they're ready to complete, we're like, ooh, not so fast. Do you really think that's a good idea? It's like that can erode trust like nothing else. Because all of a sudden, this whole project called I'm helping you get more confident in your own choices and making your own choices, we erode when we question them about completing. We erode that trust, and then we are essentially having get in our communications. So my goal, and it took a long time of someone coaching me, AKA Steve Chandler, over and over again, going, you sound like you want something here, but you're trying not to tell them. You sound like you're trying to be super okay with them completing, but secretly want them to continue. And you're asking them questions that are designed to get them to stay with you. And he would write that back to me and Michelle, and we would just be like, oh, why does he see this? I hate that he sees this, because he's right. I hate that. I hate when my coach is right. It's so frustrating. I see one, Johnny. Do you want to read about? You want to share it, Liz?
Yeah. Diana was asking about what does that session look like? The one about affording it or creating resources, et cetera. She's not sure where to even begin with that.
I love that. So, and Johnny, maybe you might have things you might do. I'll share what I might do. So I might have them. I might pull some resources about like Lynn Twist wrote The Soul of Money, right? I look for some resources that I like. Steve Chandler has some stuff about money where it starts to open up the relationship with money. So like Diana, you could have someone read the first 2 chapters of Overcoming Under-Earning, right? Before you sit with them for this. You could find a great video of a coach you trust, a master coach talking about money. And you might be like, before we sit together for these 90 minutes or this hour, you're gonna watch this. And you're gonna come to the session with the 3 things that stood out with you, like what really appealed to you, and 3 things that you're like, there's no way that could ever happen for me. And we're gonna dive into those, right? So I would be pulling out all the things that have helped me create a different relationship with money, and I would be bringing those to the table. I would be bringing them to the table. So Diana, is this Diana Towder, Johnny? So Diana, you've been in the school. I might, for fun, say to someone, right when we're doing this session, let's create an alternate character out of your relationship with money. Like if your relationship with money is an actual relationship, how do you treat money? How do you treat money? Like if money is your spouse or your partner, how do you treat it? And I might have them do like a bunch of writing on it. They might be like, I treat them like they're not worthy. I ignore them. I get mad at them a lot, and I'm abusive to my partner, AKA money, right? I get mad, I get impatient, right? I might make money human to them and help them see on the whiteboard, wow, you're not very nice to money, are you? Would you, if you were money, would you be willing to give you more? And they go, no. Or if someone's needy and desperate and like, give me, I might be like, do you think that feels good? Like if you were money, would you want to hang out with you? Do you think you're a fun date? So there's all sorts of fun stuff that you can, and literally online, you could be like, relationship with money, and you'd find 8 million things to do, Diana. And you could look at them and go, ooh, that's cool. I'm gonna do that, right? So that's like, Johnny, I don't know, what would you do?
I mean, really, my go-to with anything is slowing down and getting curious. Like really slowing down, getting curious about their relationship to money. What is it about, what is it about money? What is it about their connection to affordability? What are the beliefs that are in the way? And just really like from a true place of service and curiosity, trying to understand where they're coming from and what sort of tape is playing in their mind around affordability, around the concept of money, around paying for something like coaching, is like looking, is there anything related to deservedness? Is there anything related to, are there like auto reflexes at play? My coach did this with me when we first started working together, because his price tag was higher than anything I'd ever paid before. And I was operating under a knee jerk, like there's just no way that I could afford that. There's just no way. And he slowed down and got really curious about it and just looked like really just kind of looking at each thought kind of individually and yeah, like, is that true? Is that really true? Are you sure that's true? Like Byron Katie context could come into play, or just taking some of the actual exercises in Overcoming Under-Earning and just like using that could also work.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great. And Johnny is such a great example of someone who has completely transformed his relationship to money.
Yeah.
Like big time. So if you have questions on like, because Johnny's like the poster child of like the complete like money is
But
like,
money did not want to be married to me.
Johnny's like, money's not for me. Like, it will never occur for me. Money will never occur for me. If I was going to put words on how I saw Johnny occurring in his relationship with money when I first met him, it was like, money is not going to occur for me. Like,
that's true. Yeah, it's for others. It's not for me. Yeah.
So if you have like Johnny, what changed? You could always, can people write to you and like message you and be like, yeah,
100%.
Because we're kind of in new territory here. Coaches and money is a huge thing, right? Coaches, if your own relationship with money is mucky and got all sorts of like tentacles on it or pushing it away, it's going to be tough to create. It's tough to be of service from that place, and it's tough to create money in your practice from that place. I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible because I don't think anything is impossible, but it's much, much harder. And Johnny has gone from much, much harder to like now creating financial resources with much more grace and ease. And he has, from what I see, a much more open and healthy idea around money and what's
very respectful of the flow of money, of like, you know, the money that's under my care and how to think about it and how to manage it and all of that. You know, a book that I really loved that I read early on when I was kind of going through my money journey of getting better was called The 7 Stages of Money Maturity. And I loved that book because it started to put it in the concept in my mind of relating to my money from a mature place, right? Like I was not treating it as a mature, like responsible person. And that sort of opened my eyes to like, oh, I could have a mature, respectful relationship with money in a way that I didn't realize. So it is a book that I would recommend.
Cool. I love that. Johnny, I see a couple of questions. Do you want to share them?
Yeah. So let's see. We've got Natasha said, what if someone is a no after being proposed to and they say things like, I would love to hire you at a later time. I missed the last bit because it got out of my feet, but essentially, yes, that. Like, I want to work for you at a later time, but not now.
I mean, look, Natasha, sometimes it's like, great. And then they're a longer game and I might serve them. I might once a month, not systematically, but maybe once every 4 weeks or once every 3 weeks, I might send them something and be like, I saw this and I was thinking of you, right? I might, see, I want to continue. See, that's another piece of ain't no mountain high enough. I want it, my service is going, it's not necessarily dependent on you have said yes to working with me or you've said no to working with me, right? Because some people are long games and I want to be like, yeah, I'm like, oh, I want to coach that person. I'm going to stay in their world in one way or another, Natasha. So if that's someone you're like, they were amazing, I definitely want to coach them. I want to stay in their world. I want to send them stuff with no agenda. Like, hey, I saw this article. You know, I know we talked about this. Tell me how it is for you. I might be like, I saw this interview and I thought it was profound and it was exactly what we talked about in our last conversation, right? It's like, I'm going to continue to serve them. And I want the other people that I'm doing this with to have the sense of like, wow, Caroline really means it when she says she is going to serve me. It's like, I serve people whether or not they're ever going to become my client. Sometimes I'll serve them for a long time. Sometimes it's 3 things. Sometimes a year later, I'll go back to people and I'll be like, hey, I remembered this and something, I just saw something that would be useful for you. That is how we become, I'm going to say it again, trusted sources of transformation in a much deeper, fuller, and richer way, right? Where it's like people in our world really get like, this person is dedicated to being of service, even if they don't know those words, no matter whether I'm paying them or not. No matter whether I'm paying them or not. And I want to, it's important, I know we have, looks like we might have a couple more questions. I see the question from Patty, but I want to share this story because for me, it really speaks to 2 demonstrations of outrageous service. And these are with current clients, right? So I'm first going to share Steve Chandler's story. So Steve Hardison was his coach forever. And just recently, like in the last year, Steve said to me, we're talking about service. And he said to me, Steve Hardison bought me a car. And I was like, what? I literally like must have fallen out of my chair. I was like, what do you mean? For real? He goes, yeah. I'm like, wait, he bought you a car? And he said, well, like I was at a session and I mentioned to Steve that I needed to I couldn't rent a car because my credit rating, like his bank stuff was so messed up from bankruptcy. He was like, I just can't. So I got to figure out something else. And Steve Hardison heard this and just off the cuff was like, and Steve didn't have a car at that point. And he goes, what car would you get if you could? And I don't know. Steve said something like a Toyota. I don't know. He just sort of, and like within a week, Kathy comes and gets him. She's like, there's something in the driveway. And he walks out and there is a Toyota sitting in his driveway. And she's like, I really wish you had said like something nicer if this is what was going to happen. Now we can all hear that and just think, what? How? I'm not buying people cars, Carolyn. And I'm not saying you have to, but the concept. We're here today to stretch the boundaries of what is service and what we can do. So like that, like, is that the most extraordinary story? He bought his client a car. And he didn't just buy him a car because Steve wanted a car, right? Like we all like want a car. Steve literally could not rent a car due to his financial situation, right? Due to his credit rating, due to all this stuff. Steve Hardison had enough financial resources, and Steve had been probably by that point such a long-running client that he was like, I'm doing this. And I'm guessing, and I don't know, I've never asked Steve Hardison. I'm guessing he didn't think a whole lot about it. Like it was just like he heard it and he was like, I'm going to do that. And imagine if we took that and applied it in our own client situations. Now, again, you may be like, I can't buy people cars. That's fine. But what can you do, right? You know, my story for me was when, and many of you may have heard this story. So, you know, when it finally hit me that Michelle could die, right? I was in a class weekend at the University of Santa Monica teaching the soul-centered professional coaching program, right? Michelle wasn't teaching it. She couldn't do that year because her cancer had come back. Steve Chandler was there for his weekend. And we were sitting at breakfast at a restaurant. And all of a sudden, I don't know, we might have been talking about Michelle, but something all of a sudden hit me. And I was like, Steve, if Michelle dies, you have to promise me you're going to help me. Do you promise me? Please, you have to promise me. I was like, and I wasn't calm and relaxed. Clearly, my own inner realization and mild panic was setting in about what would happen for me if Michelle died. And Steve looked at me and he very quietly said, I promise. I promise. Now, I didn't think a lot about Steve's promise, right? Like he said, I promise. And 6 months later, Michelle has passed and I'm supposed to launch this group that Michelle and I had enrolled. It was a small group and I was really questioning whether or not I do this. I was like, I don't know. Steve, do you think, can I? And it was a month. Michelle had already been gone a month, but I was sort of questioning my ability to deliver at the level I wanted to. And Steve said to me, I'll do it with you. I'll lead the group with you. You don't have to pay me. I'll just lead the group. And the group was live in Santa Monica. Steve lived in Arizona. He's like, no, I'll lead. I'll come. I'll co-lead it with you. You don't need to pay me. I'll pay my own travel. You'll cover my meals when we eat together. And that's it. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'll just come do it with you. Give me the date. The only thing I'm going to ask is you handle all the reports. Like you do all the emails, but I will come. I will be at every call and I will do every live session. Now, did that cost Steve anything? Yes, he had to travel from Arizona to Los Angeles like 4 times and hotel. at that point, Steve's practice was flourishing, let's say. So it wasn't a lot of money, but look what he did. Now, I forgot about the promise. I wasn't like, oh, he's making good on his promise. I didn't even think about it. I just was like, what? Holy cow. And I don't know, we were having a meal at some point doing this group. And I said, I still can't believe that you're doing this. And he said, well, I made you a promise. I'm like, what do you? He goes, remember at breakfast, you said to me, promise me that you're going to help me. And I could still cry when I think about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, he didn't just remember the promise. For him, doing that was, and he did lots more, but delivering on it. So he, Steve is the kind of person, right? He made a promise and then he started listening for ways to deliver on that promise. He started listening to me for ways. So I share that for all of us, right? Like we all have ways we can listen to be of outrageous service. And they don't have to be big. They don't have to be big. And they don't have to cost us. It can be as simple as, I remember I had a client whose daughter, little girl, was in the hospital. And the parents were, my client and her husband were completely, they were really scared. It was, at that time, it seemed like no one knew what was going on. And I just said to her, just text me every day. Let's text every day. We're going to text. She was like, yeah, but you mean, I'm like, no, we're going to there's no guideline. Guidelines go away when you're walking through something like this. And I'm going to be available. So whether you need to talk on the phone or whether you just want to text me about what's happening, and if I don't hear from you, I will text you every day until we know what's happening. And that's what we did. Every day. It was every day. All the things about social self or I don't want people to text me, that all went away in service to helping be with this person as they walk through something that was scary and challenging. So we can all do that in different ways. We can all do that in different ways, right? If somebody's lost someone important to them, it's like my guidelines for how I work in my business, my policies go away. And I'm like, let's get on the phone, right? If they live near me, I'm going to show up at a service or at something. I'm going to do things that really put me where they are in the name of service. Many of you, a lot of you may not know, a coach that I coached passed away very suddenly. I don't know, Johnny, is it a year ago?
About a year ago, yeah.
A year ago. And the family was they were blindsided. This was a person in their 50s. It was very challenging. It was very sudden. And I was blindsided, right? This was a client I adored, a client who was in the school for almost 5 years. I coached them privately. And I reached out to the family and I said, I will call every client of theirs. You don't have to do it. I will call their clients and let them know what's happening. And they were like, well, we don't even know how to figure out who our clients are. I'm like, I know how we can figure out who our clients are, and I have someone who will help me do that. You don't have to do that. We just need her computer for a couple hours. So I called every person and had to deliver that news, right? Now, I've had experience with that, right? Given I've lost people. It wasn't easy, but it was something I could do that would take some of the weight of the to-dos off this family while they were in a shock and grief. So I share this because there's always things we can do that are of service, and you will know them, right? And the only thing I would say to all of you is that, Johnny, who had that question, do I or don't I? Do I or don't I? Should I do this or should I not do this? I'm in favor of do it. Do it. Because if it's too much, you're going to find out. And if they don't become your client, who cares, right? To really be enlightened, that's who I want to be, right? I want to be the person who's willing to do things in the name of service, because that's who I want to be. And shaping it with particular people and creating more clients, that's a practice over time. But doing things for your current clients, when they're in challenging or something new has happened that's exciting and you can send them something to acknowledge them, whatever it is, where they've achieved something they've been working with you on for 6 months, a year, 2 years, or you could show up and go to their thing, right? Those are all amazing things we can do. Johnny, do we have any questions before we complete?
We've just got a few more minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes. There are a couple more questions. Do you want to answer one more? Okay, so Patty said, how do you work on the knee-jerk reaction that people have when they're worried about job instability, strikes, etc., and truly worried and feeling that they need to cinch their belt and say no to coaching because of it?
Yeah. Patty, I think that's a real thing, and I don't want to like, I don't know when people, when they're like that, I don't think we can change that, right? So here's how I tend to do things in that situation. Like, if I have nobody on my calendar, right, and I got no conversations, and maybe I have 1 or 2 clients, here's what I'm going to be like, I agree with you. I can appreciate saying no to coaching right now. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do 4 sessions with you. I'm going to give you 4 sessions. We're just going to do 4 sessions together. And at the time that we're done with 4, we're done. And they go, what? But I can't pay you. I don't want you to pay. Let's just do 4 sessions. We'll do them every other week. Because Patty, I want to I want them, so when money does start flowing again, and they go, I need you as my coach, Carolyn. I can't believe that you did that at that time. I was so low. I was so challenged with the strike. Those 4 sessions meant everything to me. Can we get going? Right? That happens, right? So I've often encouraged coaches, give them 3 sessions. Act as if you're their coach right now. But limit it. Put some framework on it. Not like 17 sessions. We'll just work together until you have a job. Don't do that. But be like, I'm going to do 4 sessions. I will gift you 4 sessions. Really? You would do that? Yeah, let's do it. Let's get the first one on the calendar. So I offer that, right? We can do that for people. I'm not going to convince people during a strike where they're tightening their belts. Some people, everything changes during times of challenge. During the pandemic, some people were like, I'm not spending any money and I'm holding on to it. And other people were like, I need coaching now because I don't know what's going to happen to my job and I don't know what I'm going to do. So the people who will spend money on coaching, they are always there. And it just changes. The ones who are more risk averse pull back, and the ones who are like, now's the time. I got to get out of this job. I need some coaching. So Patty, for you to go, it's not that everybody's tightening their belt. Some will, and some will be like, I need coaching now more than ever. So, Johnny, we have completed our 4th live, Facebook Live. Anything, if you have questions on today, like I have this question that I didn't get answered, you can email me. Johnny will put my email in the comments. He'll put his. If you want to know how Johnny transformed his no relationship with money or money's not for me into like creating clients with ease and grace, write to him because he has a lot of great stories. I will let you know that anything else. We do have, I think, Johnny, I'm going to see, if you write to one of us, if we have a handout that either is about money or about service, you'll get it, right? So Johnny and I will look and see what we have. And most of all, I just want to be able to support. Service is not only the path to more clients. It's really it's not just one of the keys, it's the key. And it's a matter of learning what that's going to look like for you and how to do it. So I acknowledge all of you who came to all 4 Facebook Lives, or if you just came to this one. And
thank you
see you
all.
later.
Great to be with you all.
Bye.